Welcome to Life Picks Relationships, helping you understand and enliven your marriage through the various perspectives and experiences of others who found a way to prioritize what's really important in life. From new love to those that have weathered the storms, let's get ready to take your relationships to the next level with your host, ST.
Hey, Life Fixers, are you having an awesome day? Are you ready for another amazing episode? I'm really excited for this episode. First of all, because I love who I'm talking to, Lisa Brown, just amazing. From actually previous episode we did together, episode 43 on the 5 love languages and using your non-dominant hand. So if you hadn't checked it out after you listen to this, you might want to go back to episode 43. But this time we're going to be speaking about something way more personal, something really different, something really hard to speak about, something that is not spoken about enough. And I think that we have to be more aware about it, more that it's like a real possibility, it really happens, and how to relate when such a thing happens, whether it's for you, hopefully never, but it does happen, how that affects one's own relationship, and what to do if you know someone else who had this unfortunate circumstance of their child committing suicide. So if you want to learn more about Lisa, go to rsTherapy.com with like hyphens in between. And her email is lisa@rsTherapy.com. Also with those hyphens, I'm going to put the links in the show notes so it'll be a little bit easier. But let's get to this. So before we get into your whole story and everything that happened and how it affected your marriage and your life and how everything changed, just tell us, what was your worst dating story?
My worst dating story. I met this guy. I think he was 19 and I was about 25. I forget how I met him, but we went on this date and he was just like infatuated and he wanted to have another date. And I was like, but there's so many years between us. And he's like, oh, it doesn't make any difference. And I was like, yeah, it does. He just like kept insisting. I had to actually like kind of throw him out because I was just like, no, this is just not going to work. I couldn't get myself around the fact that he just didn't, he was just getting his first job and he didn't have any stability. And I was just like, oh, this is just too weird.
Yeah.
So,
like, well, even the first date, but yeah, good thing you got over that. Okay.
Well, I don't think I knew how young he was when I first met him. And then when we were talking, I was like, how old are you again?
Yeah, like you sound so immature.
And then I'm like, oh. And okay. I think I was like, 25 or something. It was just those 6 years. It doesn't matter, I guess, when you're older, but
yeah, I was about to say, like, the fact that you were younger made a really big difference. Like, mature. Yeah. So like you said, he's getting his first job and you're already like set and stable and like have everything
right.
out.
And look, I'm thinking, well, okay, so I'll get married at 30 or something and have kids. Not that that happened, but I just was like, oh, this is just too weird.
So when did you meet your own husband and how was that relationship in the beginning?
So I met my husband at work in New York City. He was actually we were in the newspaper business, newspapers and magazines, and I was a trainer. So I was basically a teacher, teaching people how to use the computer for creating magazines and newspapers. So I worked at like Butterick and Village Voice and, all those newspapers, the New York Times, a whole bunch of places like that. And our company had decided it was owned by 2 guys and they sold it to Kodak, and Kodak decided to get rid of all the software engineers and move because everything would be done out of the Boston office. Well, that didn't work. So they hired Rich, who actually had worked for the company for, I don't know how many years. Rich
is your husband, just by the way,
yes.
For people who don't know.
They hired Rich to come and restaff because they realized they needed software engineers in the field because all the New York customers had specialized software and they needed help. So when he came, there was like this whole thing like, oh, Rich Brown is coming. And I was like, he came and he had this like afro out to here. And I was like, this is it. This is the guy. And so anyway, we eventually ended up together.
Wow. Now, how was in the beginning of your marriage, beginning of your relationship, how was your relationship, right? Like obviously over the years it changed. So we'll get to like how it changed. But first,
Yeah.
how was it then?
Well, the thing is that he had two children. So his children were young teens. Like when I met him, his daughter was 16 and his son was 13. Or that's when we got married. But, a couple of years before that. And I was like, teenagers. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to start with teenagers. And I really wanted kids of my own. I really did want to have kids. And I was like 30, 32 or something when I met him. And I said to him, look, I want kids. And if you don't want any more kids, I want you to tell me now, because I'm not spending 2 years to get to know you and find out that you don't want kids.
Yeah.
So he said, no. I just pay for my kids. I don't spend a lot of time with them. And all that. But then I did hear when he talked to his kids, he talked so sweetly to them that it was like, a little glimpse of, this guy
what
really likes kids. Yeah, he likes kids. So I kind of let that go. And then we went head and shoulders into the whole thing. But yeah, so I did start with, and he had been out of the house for 8 years. It wasn't like I had anything to do with him not being married to his ex-wife. There was a little big gap in there. So I didn't have anything to do with that, which made it a little bit easier, I think, than if he had been going out with me when he was still married or something like that.
Right.
That's always harder situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, did you have anything to do with his kids?
I did. Actually, his son, his daughter was 16 or something. So she really wasn't interested in me. She had her own life to worry about.
Like teenager. Yeah.
Things have changed now, but her son, he came and he came at Christmas time. The first time he came to stay with us for like a week. And we were making our own Christmas ornaments. And he called his mother and said, my new stepmom is an artist, and she was not happy. She was not happy with that word. So he kind of pushed it all along. He always pushed it, but him and I got along pretty well. And then, my stepdaughter didn't really like babies. So even when I had my babies, she wasn't not interested. But now we spend like once a week with her. So
oh, wow. Once a week.
Dinner.
It's yeah. Wow. That's nice. So now, let's move it a few more years. Once you had those babies, right? Everybody knows once you have you're a couple, you're just two, you have tons of time. All of a sudden you start having kids and your whole life changes and things goes different. So how did you feel that shift in your relationship then?
Well, it's really, really different, because I kept saying to him, like, you don't understand. I have to give up my career for a couple of years and then try to figure out how to come back. And in the computer industry, it's too fast. You lose everything. So I was still trying to instill in him what I was giving up, but I loved being with the kids. And actually, if I had enough money, I would have stayed home. But then I ended up, actually, the New York Times ended up giving me a really good deal to work 3 days a week. And so I found somebody to watch the kids 3 days a week, and I could actually make enough money as if I had, because they really wanted me, which was good.
That's good. Not everyone lands such good deals like that.
Yeah, it didn't come right away. It was like I was faltering when I had my kids pretty close together. So I kind of went boom, boom, and now I'm done. So they were 16 months apart.
Oh,
and
wow.
So, I was still doing diapers. A lot of times people wait 2 years and they're just getting out of diapers and then they start again.
Right.
So I was still doing that, all the little kind of carrying all the stuff. And they were two boys. So the clothes thing was pretty easy. And, my oldest never did remember when he was by himself, because he was too young. So there wasn't any animosity.
Wait, like me, I also am the oldest, and my sister, who's 16 months younger than me, I'm like, same exact thing.
Yeah. So it's interesting. And also I was getting older. I was 36 when I had the second child. So I had to kind of make those decisions quickly, because they kept telling me, when you get 40, it starts to get not so good. And
right.
yeah. So And then we're sitting there thinking like, okay, when he's 30, we're going to be 60, 65 and like, oh God.
I'm going to be like these old people, but you know what? At your age, what you're doing now, I'm like just blown by it. So however old you continue growing, it's just going to be great. But how during that time, once you had kids, how did your relationship with Rich itself, like how did that shift?
Well, it shifted a lot. At first it was that he was never home. So I was really home with the kids a lot. And when he was home, he worked really long hours. So he would be like sleeping and I would be, okay, I'm taking care of the kids again. Right. Like get up and do something with them, And then at one point we almost broke up because I was just so mad that he was never home. And I said, okay, you can pay for kids again and I'll take them away and go live someplace else. And he said, and then he decided that I guess he didn't really want to do that. And so he changed his hours and changed a lot of things about what was important to him at work and stuff like that. So we got through that. And then we had to move.
Before we go on to that, that is like something that is very common and happens with a lot of people. What would you recommend to someone who's going through that stage now? They're like almost like they don't want a divorce, but it feels like that's the only option. What would you tell them?
I would tell them first to just write down the kind of like the good parts and the bad parts so that they can really look at it and be really honest with themselves. Like I didn't know how, since I wasn't working as much, how was I going to support those kids? And even though he was making a lot of money, was I going to get that? And he also was already paying for kids. So how much was that going to be divided? So that one of them was money and kind of me. And the other thing is that I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to get my master's. I couldn't do that if he wasn't home and he wasn't helping me pay for it. And there were a couple of things. Financial is one of them. And then I didn't want to be lonely. It's lonely.
Yes, it very much is.
Yeah.
Even like if your husband's all day at work, at least he's coming home,
Yeah. And so and then the other thing was to just write. I just kind of wrote like a diary piece of what were the main issues to try to get to like the really bottom line. And one of them was, I really loved him. I really did love him. There were a lot of things I loved about him. And I knew he loved me. I just knew that, I guess he was always a workaholic. Even my stepson said to him one day, are you divorced from mom because you work all the time? So that was like a real okay, I'm doing that too, So I said to him, I really, once I had all that kind of in my head, I sat down with him and I said, look, this is how I feel. And this is, as much as I don't want to leave, I cannot live like this anymore. Yeah. And I won't. Yeah. So that's kind of, again, it depends on what their attitude is, but, he did really want to be with the kids this time and, spend his life with them. So it turned out that he did want to.
Yeah. I like what you said about writing it down. Cause so many times we have like things in our head and just like flying all over and different emotions coming up. And when we put it on paper, then you see really clear, like what's good, what's bad, what can I work out? And
right. And really, to be honest, you really have to be honest with yourself, because otherwise you're just, it's futile. It's not worth writing it down. Yeah.
Okay. Now back to what you were saying before I cut you off.
I don't know where I was. Go ahead. Just go with the next question. So we move on to
your kids, your husband.
Oh, the school. I was going to say we had to move because the schools were really bad where we were living. Even though I wanted to stay in that area, the schools were so bad. So it was either pay for private schools or find a public school that was good. And I had moved when I was 16 to a new state, to a new school. And that was really hard. So I said to them, when we move, we're going to stay there until they're done with high school, and they were like in third grade and second grade at that point. So we looked at places to move to. It took us a while, and we finally got the move. And that was when we had our biggest fight over the move, because again, it was a money thing. The guy that was buying the house kept coming to the house and saying, can you just knock off another 1,000 because of, this? And can you just knock off another 1,000 for that? And he wasn't supposed to do that. He was supposed to go through the realtor. And so when he did it like the third time, I got so angry and I said, Rich, you're such a sucker. Why are you doing that? And he just turned around and he was screaming. He said, I just want to get out of here and get this over with. It's $1,000. Let's just get out of here. And he was so angry. And I was so angry. It was really tough. And then I think at that point, I guess, we got together, but we had found a really good house. And so once we had that kind of settled to where we were moving and the school system that we wanted and all that, things kind of settled down again.
Is that the house that you're in now? Because you have a stunning house now.
Yeah. Well, we actually redid this house. This house was smaller and different. And then we redid it when we
Your huge windows.
When we came into big money. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so now you want to tell us about your sons and about raising them and what your relationship with them was like.
Okay, so my oldest son is he's Zachary. He's very shy, really, really shy, and so but smart. And then Matthew had some auditory processing problems, so I had to spend a lot of time in the schools trying to get him help, because they didn't really know how to deal with it or didn't really want to deal with it. And so I put a lot of energy into their young years, just trying to get Matthew the right kind of help and find out what was wrong. I mean, I knew he could hear, but he just wasn't getting all the things. Like if you gave him 3 choices, he always picked the last one.
Because and then when you hear the first 2. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then like if he wanted a sandwich and then I, said peanut butter and jelly first and he picked bologna or something, he'd start crying. No, I wanted peanut butter and jelly, so he just didn't remember. So when we found out that, we finally got some help for him in the schools, and Zachary was just kind of going along, doing everything right, being a good boy. As a matter of fact, when Zach hit high school, I had 3 teachers call me and tell me what a sweet boy he was.
Oh, wow.
Because he's very kind. And even when he was in daycare, he used to play with all the little girls. He'd do silly things like they would knock him down and he'd fall down. And, he would be really silly with the kids. So he's always had that kind of soft personality. And Matthew has this like hearty laugh, really deep, hearty laugh, and but always maybe not understanding what's going on all the time. And so therefore, he was very sensitive about other people talking about him or what they thought of him. Not so self-conscious about being helped at school. Like some of the kids that get help at school, they don't want to.
They don't want
people to know that they're getting help. He didn't really care about that, but he just, I think he misinterpreted people's actions and reactions to him and took it to heart, really to heart. So he was like that. And even in like high school, he started to get down on himself really hard. And so we just watched it. And then he wanted to go to cooking school. So I started taking cooking in high school. And I went up with him when he went to visit the CIA, the Culinary Institute. And he was like in ecstasy. He just wanted to be, all the chefs are walking around in their chef outfit. He wanted to be one of those. And he was baking. Even when he was little, he liked to bake. And I know when he was really little, he wanted an easy bake oven. And I was like, but you can make a brownie that's the size of, this big. And I said, I can make brownies in my big oven for everybody.
Right.
So I never bought it. So maybe that was a mom thing, but anyway, yeah. And then Zach ended up going to school at Rutgers. But what happened with them is they both, about the time they were 10 and 12, I had a friend whose husband was a fencer at Oxford when he was young, and he wanted to take his son fencing to try it. And his son was the same age as Matthew. So I sent them. He said to me, do they want to go? And I said, when is it? And he said, Saturday. And I said, take them, because I really wanted them out of the house to do something, exercise. And they really got into it, so much so that they were both state champions in high school and coaches and the captains of their team. Different captains. Matthew was like gun ho, let's get together, get everybody together. And Zach was quietly, we're going to win. So different personalities. And then Zach went on to college at Rutgers, and they had just canceled the NCAA fencing. That he found out at orientation that they were canceling that. And so he won they ended up doing the other, whatever is not NCAA, just fencing, and he did win state champ, but he's now there. And then at the same time, they both took referee courses, so they were both referees for fencing. And Zach made a ton of money all through through college while he was doing high school fencing refereeing, and then now he's an international referee for fencing. And he just got he's been to Moscow, Lithuania, all over France, Germany, doing a whole bunch of international fencing tournaments where he's the referee. And he's they just started putting him back. He just did the NCAA in Pennsylvania. So just starting to get back into it after COVID, but he's still in the fencing thing. So that was a good idea.
He coaches your husband, no?
Yes, he did coach. Yes, he coached my husband, and my husband won second place in the international in Egypt internationals. So second place in his age range, which is 70s.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
What is it like? How do you feel as like a mom, as a wife, like seeing what they're doing?
Well, it's really exciting to see them, especially when Zach helped Rich win the championship. I mean, it was just, and he actually lost the first place just by one touch. And what was funny was Zach told him what to do, and he didn't do it. And so when he got off the stage, and my son Zach says to him, "Dad, you never listened to me."
He got second place.
Yeah, I know, but he could have had first if he listened, because he took a step back, and he shouldn't have done that. But anyway, yeah. So it was really exciting, and it was really fun. We went to Egypt, as the three of us. So backtracking a little bit, my son, who went to the CIA, Matthew, he during his time at the CIA, or actually before that, he had met some druggie friends and became friends with them. And when he went to do his they called it an externship. They put them in a bakery to work for 6 months or something like that. When he was there, his one friend overdosed and with his girlfriend. So the two of them died, and he wanted to come to the funeral, and the baker wouldn't let him because they were busy, or told him no. And he left school, and we didn't know it.
You didn't know about it?
No, we didn't know about it till like after Christmas. We got a letter from the school saying, "Sorry to hear that you didn't finish." And we were like, "What?"
Where was he? Were he like?
Oh, he's staying with some druggie friends. There was a guy who was like in his 30s who used to rent houses, and they would have all these young 19 and 20-year-olds, lost boys, I called them, or even some girls. And they would all chip in their money and buy drugs and take care of each other that way. And he kind of ran this place not too far from here, which we didn't really know about. We didn't really know. I mean, Rich had tried to get this guy, the 30-year-old, job at one point, and he never showed up. So we didn't know what was really going on. We thought it was, I don't know, things change. So once the children get into drugs, and he hadn't even gotten to 21, he hadn't even been drinking, been able to drink.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, he may have drank some nights, but he wasn't into drinking. So then their personality changes, and they start stealing things. And it's a really big downhill road. And it can last a long time, but different than alcoholic. It takes a really long time for them. Usually they're usually older. They lose their family. These 19, 20-year-olds don't lose. What do they lose?
Yeah. Right.
It's not the same as losing losing your daughter or son, or, that whole thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, the drug thing started, and that lasted quite a while.
So what did you do when you found out about that, like from a mother?
Well, the first thing we did was we had to find him.
Yeah.
So because he was doing his baking internship in Connecticut. We went there to the apartment and found some interesting things like capsules where he had emptied the insides of capsules. I don't know what exactly. I think it was like some kind of cold medicine, but I suppose it was supposed to do something for him. Anyway, we closed up that place and settled the lease, and then we had to find out where he was. And because he was a referee, he was still using that as his backup job, because he could do that. You could go for 2 hours at a high school and make $80 or something like that. So he was doing that. So Zach saw him every once in a while, not looking quite together. And Zach was, pretty quiet about it, didn't really know what to do, didn't know how to talk to him. He talked to him, but it wasn't doing any good. And so I think what happened, I don't know. Well, I went to a parents meeting, and the parents that were talking were saying that their daughter had been in rehab 13 times. And I was like, well, it must not be working if she keeps going. Like something's not.
Does it need like a different rehab, a different type of like help?
Yeah. So that was the first thing. We did send him to rehab. We sent him to Florida, so he would be away from everybody. He did not smoke cigarettes when he left. He did smoke cigarettes when he came back, which was really annoying because, one habit, another habit, and a nasty habit, and you need money for it. And then they go to, I don't really think rehab does a lot, but they had a session where they had to make amends to us and tell us all the things they did that they were sorry for, which was really heartbreaking. But at the same time, again, once they get back into drugs, it doesn't mean anything, And then when they come home,
hold on, sorry to interrupt you, but that type of session, do you think it's like beneficial in any which way to any side, or like, what did it do for you?
I guess, it seemed like they were honest because they were crying. You could hear all the kids, they were crying. They were sorry that they did that, but they still need the drug. Do you know what I mean? It's
right.
still,
it doesn't help just to be sorry if you're still doing this. Yeah.
Yeah. They still don't know how to handle that need. And so when they come back and they go to NA meetings, there's all these guys who know how to get drugs, women and guys, that know how to get drugs if they decide to go fall back into it. And, not to say that it's bad, but I don't think it helped a lot.
Okay.
You know? And so he moved out, went with some friends. One friend had called us and said he's trying to kill himself. So we picked him up again, brought him home, got him cleaned up, and, he ran away again. I mean, it was just like never ending. So we sent him to another rehab that was in Pennsylvania. It was in South Jersey first, and then they had a second piece that was in Pennsylvania. And I thought he would tell us that he was doing okay there, but he was writing to a friend of his that it was terrible, that people didn't like him and they were talking about him, or, he didn't feel comfortable. And my husband and I had debated about whether to get a car for him. He kept saying he couldn't meet his sponsor because he didn't have a car. And I didn't want him to have a car because I knew he would leave, or suspected he would leave. And finally we brought the car up and he left. So we had to find him again. And so we back, and I made him, when he came back, I had at the last rehab, I had asked them if he was suicidal, or could they at least have a psychologist look at him and see if there was something they could give him to help him out. And so they did.
Was he on any meds until then, or no? Because he couldn't take because he was on drugs. So
no, he wasn't on any meds. And so they wanted to put him on Ritalin and some antidepressant. And I said, we said, well, you don't need Ritalin because you don't need to concentrate. You're not going to school. Let's just try one. So when he came home, I made him make a contract with me that he would try for, a certain amount of months, this drug to see the antidepressants to see if that helped. And the doctor here had explained to him that you cannot stop taking them. You can't, even if you feel better, you can't think, oh, I'm better now.
Right.
You have to, wean off of it. You can't just stop.
Exactly.
So we finally thought we were in a good place. We were of course, our whole life was around him. We had to drive him everywhere because we didn't trust him and, all that stuff. And so
how old is he at this point?
He was 22.
Okay.
Yeah. And we finally had decided that we were at a plan to go on vacation, and we decided that we were going to do it. And my girlfriend at that time was living in the house because she had lost her house, a really good friend of mine, a college friend. And so we thought, well, there's somebody in the house, and he was going to be going to meetings, and we thought everything was okay. So we went to England, and while we were there, he overdosed.
So what was that like for you? You're away on vacation and all of a sudden you get this news. And
well, because it happened, what happened first was the police called
the house, or they called you?
No, they called Rich's cell phone.
Okay.
So what happened, let me tell you what happened here. What happened here was my girlfriend, my girlfriend was here with her daughter, and they hadn't heard or seen Matthew for the day, and they thought he was out. And then I guess they realized his car was here, and they went upstairs to his room and knocked on the door, and he didn't answer, and it was locked. So they knew how to unlock it, and they went in, and he was dead. So they called the police, and the police came, and then they called Zach, and Zach came, and he was not totally surprised, I guess. And nobody said anything about Heather, my stepdaughter, she lives across the street. Nobody called her. But anyway, so the police, when they realized that he was dead, called Rich's cell phone. And we were, at that time, it was like 2:00 in the morning, England time. And so Rich picked up the phone, and I said, "Who is it?" And he said, "It's the Watchung police." And I went, "Oh, that can't be good." And I just thought maybe he had a car accident or something. And then they told us that he was dead. So we had to get new flights. We actually were with a friend, my friend Marcia and her husband Dan. So they helped us get our flights, and we just cried the whole way home. And my brother had been called. My brother and I are pretty close. We are also 16 months apart. And him and his wife, his wife was my best friend in high school, so I've known her a long time. So they were here, and they picked us up, and we came home. And one of Rich's friends had a psychologist who was a friend of his, and he sent her over to talk to us about it. So it was my girlfriend and her daughter who found him, my brother and his wife, Zach, and me, and Matt, and Rich. And she just talked to us a little bit and gave us some names of psychologists that we could talk to. And she said she couldn't work with us because she knew everybody. She knew Zach and Matthew. So we stumbled around a little bit for a couple of months. He died in September. Christmas time was his favorite. And when we got the ornaments out, everybody fell apart. So we decided not to do Christmas. And I had said maybe we should go away. So we actually took Zach to Washington, D.C. We had not been there since he was really little. And we all picked our favorite museum. I wanted to see Air and Space. He wanted to see the Spy Museum. Rich wanted to see Rich's part India, Cherokee. So he wanted to see the Indian Museum. And it was actually a really nice trip because we hadn't been there. And those things are really interesting.
Yeah.
And it was a way to not be sitting home,
Just like.
Yeah. So, and then things kind of fell apart. I think when you lose a child like that, it's different if they're sick because you can't really do anything about it. If they have cancer, it's hard to know. But when they're on drugs, it's like, what if? There's all these what ifs.
And all the guilt, like,
yes,
if I would have done that, and if maybe I should have given him more help when he was a kid, and then.
Maybe we should have done this. And then I had these tools that I had learned from Lucia Capacchione of, using your dominant hand and doing some things. And I I couldn't get him to do it when I wanted to. He did keep a journal, and that journal was about drugs. So when we found it, it took us a while to find it. But anyway, I just felt like, both Rich and I individually felt it was our fault, and maybe we should have done something different, and we didn't know, so we kind of blamed ourselves and could not connect that with that each of us felt that way. So by the summer, I was ready to leave again. I was just, except that my business is in the house. So as you can see, I was ready to leave again because he just couldn't climb out of anything and wouldn't touch me. And just things were just really bad. We wouldn't talk or anything. So I did the same thing again. I sat down and I wrote out all the things that I could do or couldn't do at that point to maybe help the relationship. And I finally walked in the bedroom and I said to him, I cannot do this alone. Yeah. And I guess he realized he couldn't do it alone either. So most parents don't make it through because of the guilt piece. It's just really hard. And so we talked about that, and we talked about what decisions we had made. And you can't change those decisions, so they just are what they are. But I think, if you realize that how hard it is for you, and you don't have, my parents were both dead also, by the way. So that was the really hard part. I mean, I don't know how they would have dealt with it, but, just not having them was something. My aunt, my mother's sister, is still alive even now. And she was the one that I went to because I needed some mom. So I also did a couple of things. I did an EMDR program because I believe in the brain stuff, and that has to do with going through the trauma with your brain.
Right.
And so that made me I probably wouldn't have ever gotten through this conversation at all if I hadn't done that. It helped me two ways. One of the other things that happened in between was when Matthew was just had gone away, and we didn't know. I had no idea where he was or if he was alive or not. Zach had some surgery, and the doctor screwed up, and he came home and he looked like he was dying. And the nurse called me the next day and she said, "How's Zach?" And I said, "Oh, he's really, really sick." And she said, "You need another doctor." And she was the nurse that was with the doctor that he was. And so I said to Rich, he did something really wrong and he needs another doctor. So I had a friend who was a doctor, and I called him and asked him if he would see him. So that problem got solved because we found a really good doctor. But when I did the EMDR, that was the point that I zeroed in on, because at that point I didn't know where Matthew was, if he was alive or dead. And then I thought I was going to lose Zach too. And then when we took him into the hospital, when Zach went in the hospital, it was probably, I don't know, like maybe 8 months after Matthew had died. The nurse that was prepping him for the surgery was throwing all this stuff on his lap. And at one point he just fainted. And when he fainted, Rich and I looked at each other and just lost it. And the doctor was like, it's okay. He's just fainted. We'll get him, But at the time, I just said to the doctor, we lost our son 8 months ago. And so, I just wanted him to understand why we both were like, whoa. But anyway, so Zach turned out okay. Everything turned out okay with him. And we were able to, he himself does not talk about, what happened. He had his best friend had OD'd like 6 months before Matthew did. And so I guess in a way he suspected that was going to happen, knowing how bad the drugs were. But anyway, so you really need to cut yourself some slack that, once the drug takes hold, that those children especially are not able to function right. They're not the same people.
They're not themselves. They're not.
Yeah, their whole mind is centered around. I mean, if you think about something you really like chocolate, if you wanted to have chocolate every day and you needed it really badly, that's how they feel every day, every moment. they need this, they need this, they need this. It's something that makes them feel better, So that's why I'm not sure that rehab I'm not sure that the techniques that I use in rehab really work, because it seems to me that there has to be some way of teaching them, or, learning like you do when you're, overweight and you don't want to eat, learning to not do that, or some,
learning
I don't know,
skills of some sort to put in
yeah,
place instead. Like not just like no drugs, but what else could you do to deal with your emotions, or when you feel that way, like I need this now, how else could you go and
yeah, like to write or draw or paint, or, for me, as you can see, I paint. It's the only way I can keep myself going. And every once in a while, when I do painting that I really enjoy, or I really like to look at, then I feel good about myself, So anytime that I'm down on myself, I can just look at that picture again and then say, well, you have something that you can give to others, some joy. And I think part of the other thing with the drugs is once they start stealing from and stealing and lying to all the people that they love, I don't know how they can feel good about themselves. It kind of doubles up on itself all the time, because they have to admit when they're there in front of that person that they've lied to them and stolen from them, and it must not make them. You can't get. So what you need to do is make them find something that makes them feel good about themselves, so that they can, I don't know, just put it out there, or even if they just scribble their anger, whatever helps them. But talk, I don't think doesn't work as well. You need a physical, I think a physical thing to do. Like I know some athletes, come from that, where they were, as teenagers into drugs, and then they decided to do an athletic thing, and that pulled them out because they concentrate on, weightlifting or whatever it is. And I think it has to be a physical thing to get out of the drugs, because otherwise they just, they'll start smoking, they'll just put other addictions in there. And the addictions that you want them to have are addictions to, painting, something harmless, or something they can even, be proud of. And so I think that's the hard part. And that's why I'm not really fond of rehab protocols.
Yeah, personally, the people that I know, quite a few of them that have gone to rehab, like they also, like you said, like 13 times, like it's just normal. They just keep on going back. I guess it does work for some people, and I'm not here to like judge if it has worked for someone, amazing, and for the general public, I don't usually think it's so the best idea.
Well, yeah, if they can go through it and 13 times or 11 times, and they know exactly what to say and how to get through it, and they're not learning anything, they're not getting anything new. So I know they did at the one rehab, they did have horses, which I thought was really interesting. And Matthew really liked that, because it's not a person. Do you know what I mean?
So physical, horses, like dogs, they're like the most relatable to being
right.
Humans.
And so I think that's part of it too, that if they can, like I said, anything that can take their mind. I mean, if you can get your mind off on one thing for 10 minutes, whatever it is. And that's why I like to paint, because I don't think when I'm painting,
Right. Exactly. Just let it
I'm thinking colors. I'm not thinking about anything else,
Right. Yeah. So now when you noticed that you and Rich were both feeling guilty about it and they weren't doing it to support each other, how did you overcome that guilt? How were you able to go and be supportive of each other?
Well, the thing is that guilt's not ever going to go away. I realized at one point it's never going to go away. We're going to always be like, what if we did this? It can't go away. There's so many choices that we've made that maybe we're wrong or right, but it's done. I can't redo it. So you have to kind of get over that thought that what you could have done, because it's done. You can't go back. You can only hope that you learn something or teach somebody else or help somebody else by, giving them information that you have. I really think just writing, even if you don't keep the writing, writing it down and being able to, you can read it later and step back. One of the things that I did want to mention is that a lot of people, I don't know about other cultures, but in America, they don't teach us how to deal with death. And a lot of people don't know what to say. And they say things like, he's in a better place, which makes no sense at all if you want the person to be there. And, and they're sorry for a loss. And you have to say, well, you don't need to be sorry for anything. But one of the things that I learned, my girlfriend's son had also died of an overdose, but years before that, and I didn't know her son. But one of the things that I found was she most enjoyed if I asked her about him, like, what did he do? Did he, did he like to cook? Did he like to, that kind of stuff. So I think if you know somebody who loses a child, to ask what they liked and ask about them so they can talk about it, because that's the memories they want to keep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's true, not even for suicide, but for any sort of death, that usually that is like, just let them talk about it. Let them share what they want to share. Don't push for something that like they don't want to talk about, but those good memories is.
Well, I've done that with bereavement groups. We've done collages and when you do a collage, it's not going to mean the same thing. That a table of flowers is not going to mean the same thing to you that it does to me. And it's a personal memory. So you can do those collages of the memories that you want to keep, and nobody else really knows what they mean. And so that's a way to put that memory in a place that's safe and that you can revisit anytime,
Right. Yeah. Really safe. Like, not like, oh, I have to talk about this or something like that. Now, how has your marriage changed after this, after you were able to like go back, like in a supportive way, I mean, with Rich, and years later now, how do you look at that event in effect to how your actual marriage is?
Well, there's still times when, something reminds you of him and you can say that. We have not thrown his clothes out yet, which I'm getting to the point. It's been 6 years, so I'm getting to that point. It's just really hard. But one of the things I had done is, for my girlfriend's a quilter, and she asked me if she could make a quilt for Matthew's clothes. And she did. She made a quilt with his chef pants in it, and his baseball, and a couple of swords and things that had to do with fencing. And that I got for Rich's birthday, I think like the third or fourth year. And it was a really nice gift because it has memories, and it also has, we found his T-ball shirt, which is, a little tiny little 5-year-old shirt. And she put it in the center, and she left the sleeves there. And it has the name of Rich's first business, Icon, because that was the supporter. So it's a really nice quilt, and it was really touching. But every once in a while, there'll be something, and I'll say, I wish Matthew could do that. And we can talk about it now. It's much easier to talk about it. But we do miss him, and there's some things that will set us off, depending on what it is. Like, he found a video one time and he said, oh, you got to see this video. And as soon as I saw it, I started crying, and then he started crying. But at least we cried together,
right?
And I think we just have settled onto what it is. There's a lot of concern about, we're always concerned about Zach. I mean, the very first trip we took after that big one, where Rich and I went and left Zachary here, I was crying when I got on the plane. And my sister-in-law was with me, and she goes, why are you crying? We're going on a trip. And I said, well, the last time I went, I came home to a dead boy, So she said, okay. But he sent us video, videos and pictures while we were away. So
he understood that, like,
yeah. So I think he knows. And right now, because of COVID, because he was traveling so much, he was basically living here, even though he wasn't home much. And so he stayed here. And Rich said the other day, I think he's staying here to watch over us. So I don't know, but
he's worried about you too.
Yeah. And because I still cry sometimes, and he gets that, but
for sure.
I think it really helped that they did the fencing together, because it really meant a lot for Rich, who's not as verbal as I am, and it's harder for him to talk about that. But to spend that extra time and effort, really, being with Zach solid, really helped. And when the kids were younger, actually, Rich retired young and got to do Boy Scouts with them. So he spent a lot of time camping and stuff with them, which, most dads don't get to do because they're too busy, but he was lucky he got to do that. And I used to say there's no girl in Boy Scouts, so mom doesn't do that stuff because I'm not a camper.
Has your own relationship with Zach changed after this? Like you were really worried now and right.
Yeah, I don't think it's changed so much, except that maybe he understands why I spent so much time trying to help Matthew, because I thought he needed it more, and maybe understands, I think in a way he understands what we went through. He has a really good friend who also lost a brother, and she tells me they talk about it. So he has somebody to talk to. And when I see her, she always says, it's okay. She lets me know how he's doing. Basically, we have similar likes. We're both crossword puzzle people. And I like to read books about the brain, and he does too. So something that Rich has no interest, he's reading spy novels. So, and history stuff, which I don't care for. So yeah, there's things that we do. And the other thing is I love comedy, and Zach and I have always enjoyed comedy. And I always said to him, if I ever get sick, just take me to the comedy clubs. Because, if you can laugh, you can have a good time, and it relieves a lot of stuff. And so both of us listened to comedy on the radio, and then we'll tell each other, oh, did you hear this one, or something like that. So
you have your own personal bond.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, before we get to our final question, is there any one specific thing you really want the life Pixers to take away from your story, from even if they hopefully don't have to deal with this, but know people about this, or with their own kids, or just life in general?
Well, I think the first thing is to understand how hard it is for them. Like I said, the drugs are such a pull, and it's really hard to, once you get to the point where you can imagine needing something so badly every day that you can't think about anything else, you might understand how that drug has addicted them, and know why they have to steal and lie to get there. But the best thing I think is to find, like I said, maybe find a way to make an addiction someplace else that's safe, like drawing, or even, music, anything like that, that helps them just get away. Even if they don't play music, if they listen to music, sometimes music, it really helps people. Dance. I mean, there's so many things out there. And I guess with the world as it is, a lot of people don't think about those things as often, like painting or dancing, or, any of the really cultural things that you can do for fun.
Yeah.
And not have to be perfect at it. Nobody cares if you dance badly, because, who cares?
Right. You're not doing it for your job. You're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's for everyone. Should teach our kids from little for ourselves, just to have these other things, these physical things, these other ways to process ourselves, to relieve stress, just to live life and enjoy what's going on.
Yeah, and understand that there are people who will say things, about you, but why do you care? Yeah. You don't need to care. You don't have to take that in. You can just stay with the people who love you, and understand that they want you there. They want you to be with them. Yeah. So, yeah, I think I don't know. Obviously, we didn't do what we thought we could do, but I do understand more about the drug and how addictive it is. And I also understand, at one point, heroin was cheaper than cigarettes. So how can you compete with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for our final question, I don't remember if I asked this to you on our previous discussion or not, but how would you describe an extraordinary relationship without using love, connection, or honesty?
I think you need to really talk when you need, you need to talk things out. And if you can't say them, then write them, and you can either read it to them or leave it someplace where they'll find it. I mean, you need to really hash things out sometimes. Sometimes the problem is not even what you're complaining about. Sometimes it's underneath, there's something underneath. The TV's too loud, or whatever that is. I don't want you watching TV in bed, or, whatever that underlying thing is. If we can get to that point and just say, could you please not be watching that at night? Or, could you please give me a kiss at night? Some of the things that, and when you ask for that, say, what can I do for you? Don't just make it all about you.
Right.
What is there something I can do for you that would make you happy?
I like that so much.
Yeah, because it's not all about you. You have to, it's a relationship. You have to share. So you have to give and get.
Yeah, exactly. So both parts of like getting to the core, getting to like, not just like, I don't want you to watch TV in bed. Is it because of like, you want to spend more time with me or whatever it is? And the fact of going both ways. That was great. Well, I really appreciate this, Lisa. I know it wasn't easy, and I know it benefited a lot of people who listen to this, and just can't wait to see what else is going to bring for you this in your life with all the great work that you're doing.
Thank you.
That's all for this episode of Life Picks Relationships, and we have a huge favor to ask of you that will not only support this show, but also give others what they need to take their marriage to the next level. We're striving to have 1 million downloads per episode by December 31st, 2025, so please share it with your family and friends so they can turn their relationship into an extraordinary one.